Buenos días. Vamos a empezar.
Good afternoon. We will be beginning the meeting of the Executive Committee shortly, but we have 9 members, but I only see 6 present, so we still are missing 3 members. We'll wait a couple of minutes. I see Argentina coming in.
Good morning, all. Mr. President, delegates, ministers, I hope you had a good night, having had a marathon session for the last 4 days, a very efficient one. And I welcome you now to this session, I'd like to welcome members of the Executive Committee and observer member states to the 173rd session of this committee. Jamaica, my home country, held the presidency of the Executive Committee for the period September 2022 to September 2023. I therefore have the duty to preside over the committee until the new president has been elected. I'd like to inform that since there are 9 members of the Executive Committee present, there is a quorum. Therefore, I declare the session officially open. I also would like to welcome the 3 new members of the Executive Committee: Canada, Ecuador, and Guyana. I will now yield the floor to the Secretary to report to the Executive Committee on the statutory provisions concerning this item.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rule 15 of the Rules of Procedure of the Executive Committee states, "The committee shall elect a member of the committee to the presidency, the vice presidency, and the office of rapporteur, respectively. They shall hold their office until their successors are elected. Each elected member shall designate a person on its delegation to serve in that office for the duration of the session. The elections shall take place each year at the first session of the committee, following the election of the new members of the committee by the council or conference." Thank you, Mr. President.
I inform the committee that by agreement reached in the heads of delegation meeting, Uruguay has been nominated to the presidency. And I ask the question, are we all in agreement with Uruguay? Okay, I see no disagreement. So if there are no objections, I declare Uruguay elected by acclamation and invite the delegate of Uruguay to come to the head table to assume the presidency.
Senhora Presidente.
Madam.
On behalf of the whole Secretariat, I want to first to congratulate the Minister of Uruguay, that's now the new President of the Executive Committee. And I also want to thank the outgoing President, Minister Tufton. Minister Tufton played a very important role in recent years. He was President of Directing Council, was President of the Executive Committee. Minister Tufton is also a champion for health promotion in the region, and he has provided a lot of collaboration to this organization in all these times that he's serving as Minister. So Minister Tufton, as a token of our appreciation for your good work, we want to give you a gift. So now he can use the hammer during the ministerial meeting in Jamaica. Dear CMO, please, be advised that he will do that. So thank you. And Senhora Ministra, felicitaciones.
And Madam Minister, congratulations on your election to the presidency of the Executive Committee. Thank you very much, Mr. Director, distinguished member states and delegations present. It's an honor for my country and for myself to serve the Pan American Health Organization in my capacity as president of the executive committee over the next year. We are committed to work in the necessary bodies, following rules and regulations, and if necessary, at the request of the director of this office, or on his own initiative, or by the initiative of 3 member states. Thank you for your trust and for this distinguished honor granted to me. Thank you.
Procedemos ahora a la...
We will now proceed to the election of the vice president. I'd like to report to the committee that by virtue of the agreement reached at the meeting of heads of delegation, the United States of America has been proposed as candidate for the vice presidency. Are you all in agreement? If there is no objection, I declare the United States of America elected by acclamation, and I'd like to let the delegate of the United States know that they can remain in their seat.
Procedemos ahora a la elección.
We shall now proceed to the election of the rapporteur. By virtue of the agreement attained at the meeting of the heads of delegation, Chile has been proposed as rapporteur. Are you all in agreement? If there is no objection, I declare Chile elected by acclamation and invite the delegate of Chile to take her seat at this head table. I'd like to report to the committee that we need to adopt a resolution on the following point. There is no need to adopt a resolution on this. The appointments will appear in the final report as a decision. Now let us consider the next item, 2.2, adoption of the agenda. I'd like to draw the committee's attention to document CE 173/1, Rev 2, and I'd like to ask the Secretary to report on the statutory provisions concerning this item.
Thank you, Madam President. The provisional agenda, document CE 173/1, Rev 2, was prepared by the Director and distributed in accordance with the rules of procedure. Rule 9 provides that the committee shall adopt its own agenda and in doing so may make such additions or modifications to the provisional agenda as it may wish in accordance with these rules. Thank you, Madam President.
Concedo la palabra.
The floor is open for discussion. If there is no objection, the agenda is approved, and there is no need to approve a resolution on this point. The adoption of the agenda will appear in the final report as a decision by the committee. Let us move on to item 3.1, the election of one member to the Subcommittee on Program, Budget, and Administration on the expiration of the period of office on the Executive Committee of Brazil. And I'd like to bring the committee's attention to item 3.1 of the provisional agenda, and I'd like to request the Secretary to report on the statutory provisions concerning this item.
President, the Subcommittee on Program, Budget, and Administration is composed of 4 members elected from among the membership of the Executive Committee and 3 members designated by the Director. As the period of the Executive Committee of Brazil expired, it is necessary to elect 1 new member from among the membership of the Executive Committee to serve on the subcommittee in their place. Argentina, Jamaica, and the United States of America continue to serve on the subcommittee for 2023. If the number of candidates does not exceed the number of vacancies, Rule 45 of the Rules of Procedure states, elections shall normally be held by secret ballot. When the number of candidates for elective office does not exceed the number of offices to be filled, no ballot shall be required, and such candidates shall be declared elected. Where ballots are required, one teller shall be appointed by the President from among the delegates. Thank you, Madam President.
Gracias. Ahora le concedo la palabra.
I call on the director to introduce this item. Thank you, Madam Chair. In reviewing the participation of countries in the Subcommittee on Program Budget and Administration to ensure balance in the membership of the committee and also ensure balanced representation of all subregions, I'd like to propose the candidacy of Ecuador to replace Brazil, who is ending their current term. So my proposal is to nominate Ecuador.
Si no hay objeciones,
If there is no objection, I declare Ecuador elected, and this will appear as a decision in the final report. Item 3.2, the appointment of the award committee for the PAHO Award for Health Services Management and Leadership 2024. I'd like to draw the committee's attention to document CE 173/2 and invite Dr. James Fitzgerald, the director of the Department of Systems and Health Services for the Pan American Sanitary Bureau, to come to the head table and introduce this item.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Members of the Executive Committee, Director, every year the governments of the countries of the Americas, acting through their representatives at the meetings of the governing bodies of the Pan American Health Organization, confer the PAHO Award for Health Services Management and Leadership. In 2023, the PAHO Award for Health Services Management and Leadership was conferred on Alfredo Dario Espinosa Brito of Cuba. In 2024, the award will again be conferred on a candidate who has made a significant contribution in his/her home and/or throughout the region of the Americas. The Director of the Pan American Sanitary Bureau invites member states to submit no more than 2 nominations for the award through a call for candidates during November each calendar year. The names of the candidates proposed by each member state must be received by the Director of the Pan American Sanitary Bureau no later than the 31st of March in the year of the award, in this case 2024. According to the procedures adopted in the 158th session of the Executive Committee in 2016 and by the 56th Directing Council in 2018, the Award Committee will be selected each year during the first session of the Executive Committee. The members of the Award Committee will receive the nominations prior to the 174th session of the Executive Committee for their review. The Bureau will arrange a meeting of the Award Committee for the members to deliberate on the proposed candidates and submit its recommendations during the week of the session of the Executive Committee in June 2024. And so the Executive Committee is invited to nominate and delegate an alternate from each sub-region to serve in the Award Committee, together with the President of the Executive Committee. Thank you, Madam President.
muchas gracias. Para facilitar.
Thank you very much. In order to make the discussion for this point, I'd like to propose as members of the jury for the awarding of the prize to the United States and Canada, to the United States and Guyana, and as alternate members, Canada and Chile. With this proposal, all regions and subregions are represented. The floor is now open for discussion. If there is no objection, I declare as the main members the United States of America and Guyana, and as alternate members Canada and Chile.
Informo al comité
And I'd like to report to the committee that the appointments will appear in the final report as a decision. We will now move on to item 4.1, the dates proposed for the meetings of the governing bodies of PAHO in 2024. A, the 18th session of the Subcommittee on Program, Budget, and Administration of the Executive Committee. I'd like to draw to the committee's attention subparagraph A of document CE 173/3, referring to the dates proposed for the 18th meeting of the Subcommittee on Program, Budget, and Administration. And I'd like to ask the Secretary to present the regulatory provisions on this matter.
Under its terms of reference, the Subcommittee on Program, Budget, and Administration shall hold at least one session a year. Additional sessions of the subcommittee may be convened in the years when the program budget of the organization is being considered. The members of the executive committee are asked to set the dates of the 18th session of the subcommittee on program budget and administration. Sessions of the subcommittee are held at the headquarters of PAHO on dates established by the director in consultation with the executive committee. Thank you, Madam President.
Gracias.
Thank you. I now call on the director to introduce this item.
Senhor,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I propose that the 18th session of the subcommittee be held from the 20th to the 22nd of March, 2024. The floor is now open for discussion. If there is no objection, I declare these dates approved. B, 174th session of the Executive Committee. I would like to draw the committee's attention to document C 173/3, subparagraph B, which refers to the proposed dates for the 174th session of the Executive Committee, and would request the Secretary to report on the statutory provisions concerning this item.
Thank you, Madam President. Article 17A of the PAHO Constitution provides that 2 regular meetings of the Executive Committee shall be held every year. One of these meetings shall be held at the place of the meeting of the Council or Conference and immediately following it. Special meetings shall be held when convoked by the Director of the Bureau, either on his own initiative or upon the request of at least 3-member governments. The members of the Executive Committee are asked to set the dates of the 174th session of the Executive Committee. Thank you, Madam President.
I now would like to call on the Director to introduce this item.
Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposal is that the 174th session of the committee be held from the 24th to the 28th of June of 2024. I now call on the plenary to begin the discussion of this item. If there is no objection, these dates are approved. C, 61st Directing Council of PAHO and 76th Regional Committee of WHO for the Americas. I'd like to draw to the committee's attention subparagraph 173/3, subcommittee, subitem C, which refers to the proposed date for the 61st Directing Council of PAHO and the 76th session of the Regional Committee of WHO for the Americas. And I'd like to ask the Secretary to please report on the statutory provisions concerning this item.
Council states, the Director shall convene sessions of the Council in conformity with Article 12, Paragraph A of the Constitution. Article 12, Paragraph A of the Constitution reads, The council shall normally meet once each year in those years in which the conference does not meet. The members of the executive committee are asked to set the dates for the 61st Directing Council, and which is also the 76th session of the Regional Committee of the WHO for the Americas. Thank you, Madam President.
Gracias.
I now call on the director to introduce this item.
Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I propose that the 61st Directing Council of PAHO and the 76th session of the Regional Committee of WHO for the Americas be held from the 30th of September to the 4th of October 2024. These dates take into account, distinguished members, the global calendar of the regional committees of the World Health Organization, as well as the dates for the general debate at the UN General Assembly in 2024, so that the member states could participate at both sessions, the UN General Assembly and this executive committee meeting, directing council meeting. I now call on the plenary to discuss this point. If there is no objection, the dates are adopted, and I'd like to report to the committee that there is no need to adopt a resolution on this point. The accepted dates will appear in the final report as a decision. Now, we will now consider the next item for point 2, proposed topics for meetings of the governing bodies of PAHO in 2024. A, 18th session of the Subcommittee on Program Budget and Administration of the Executive Committee. And I'd like to draw the committee's attention to document CEE 173/4, Rev 1, which refers to the proposed topics for the 18th session of the Subcommittee on Program Budget and Administration, and ask the Secretary to report on the statutory provisions pertaining to this point.
Madam President, Rule 4 of the Rules of Procedure of the Subcommittee of Program Budget and Administration states, the Director of the Pan American Sanitary Bureau shall prepare the provisional agenda of sessions of the subcommittee, and it shall be dispatched with the notice of convocation. The provisional agenda shall include A, any item the inclusion of which has been ordered by the conference, B, any item the inclusion of which has been ordered by the council, C, any item the inclusion of which has been mandated by the executive committee, D, any item the inclusion of which has been mandated by a member of the subcommittee, E, any item proposed by a member state, participating state, or associate member, and F, any item proposed by the director. Thank you, Madam President.
Gracias.
I'd now like to offer the floor to the director to present this agenda item.
Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam President. I do believe that the members of the Executive Committee do have the proposal, but nonetheless, I will read it. The topics proposed for the 18th session of the Subcommittee on Program Budget and Administration of the Executive Committee are, first, matters having to do with regulations, election of the head table, adoption of the agenda, then matters relating to program policies. We have we have four topics. First, evaluation of the end of the program budget biennium 2022-2023, and the second interim report on execution of the operational strategic plan of PAHO. The second, collaboration with non-state agents that maintain official relationships with PAHO, and appointment of a member to be part of the audit committee at PAHO. We will then move to administrative and financial matters. First, the panorama of the financial report of the director for the 2023. Then amendments to the financial regulations and financial rules of PAHO, should there be any. Then programming of budget surplus, if there is any, and then program of revenue surplus, if any. Also, if there are any amendments to the Pan American Sanitary Bureau staff regulations and rules, then human resources management in the Pan American Sanitary Bureau. Next item, update on the Master Capital Investment Fund and on the Master Capital Investment Plan implementation. Update on the status of the Latin American Center for Perinatology, Women and Reproductive Health. Report on the charge assessed on the procurement of public health supplies for member states. And then there are two matters of general information, these being the following: report on strategic issues between PAHO and WHO, and the draft provisional agenda for the 174th session of the Executive Committee. Those are the items I would like to propose for next year's meeting of the Subcommittee of Program and Budget. Thank you very much. I now offer the floor to the plenary for discussion of these agenda items of the 18th session of the Subcommittee on Program, Budget and Administration. Director, would you like to make any additional comment? No? This is what we are proposing. But as usual, at the beginning of the meeting, the subcommittee members will adopt their agenda. If there is anything they'd like to add, they will have an opportunity to do so at the beginning of the meeting. I'd like to inform the committee that it is not necessary to adopt a resolution on this item. The approved topics will appear as a decision at the end of the report. B. 174th session of the Executive Committee. I would like to bring to the attention of the committee document CE 173/5, which refers to the proposed topics for the 174th session of the Executive Committee, as well as for the 176th and 178th sessions, and request the Secretary to read the statutory provisions concerning this item.
Thank you, Madam President. Rule 6 of the Rules of Procedure of the Executive Committee states that the provisional agenda of a session of the committee shall be prepared by the Director. Rule 7 states the provisional agenda shall include A, any item the inclusion of which has been ordered by the conference, B, any item the inclusion of which has been ordered by the council, C, any item proposed by the committee, D, any item proposed by a member or associate member, and E, any item proposed by the Director. Thank you, Madam President.
I offer the floor to the Director to present this agenda item.
This is much longer, so I will not read one by one. You have received the document beforehand, so I am pleased to present this proposal. I just want to highlight some topics. For the 174th session of the Executive Committee, as well as the topics proposed for the 176th session and 178th session, scheduled for 2025 and 2026, respectively. There are several items being proposed under policy matters for 2024. These include the preliminary report of the end of biennial assessment of the PAHO program budget 22-23 and the second interim report on the implementation of the PAHO strategic plan 2020-2025. Strategy and plan of action to decrease the burden of sepsis in the region of the Americas through an integrated approach. Policy for strengthening health sector action on climate change with equity. Plan of action for strengthening information systems for health 2024-2030. Policy on long-term care. Strategy for strengthening the essential public health functions to accelerate health systems transformation in the region of the Americas. The proposed list of topics also contains those standard items under committee matters, administrative and financial matters, and personnel matters, as well as several progress and final reports under matters for information. This concludes my presentation, Madam President.
Gracias.
Thank you. I offer the floor to the plenary for discussion of the agenda item of the 174th session of the Executive Committee.
Señor Director.
Director, would you like to make any additional comments?
Le doy la palabra a los Estados Unidos.
I offer the floor to the United States of America.
The United States continues to reflect on the Directing Council discussion on the status of sexual and reproductive health access to reproductive and health services, and our shared commitment to the strategy for universal access to health and universal health coverage, which recognizes that all people and communities must have access without any kind of discrimination to comprehensive, appropriate, and timely quality health services and supplies. As noted in the status report, the continued access barriers to health care faced by the LGBTQIA+ population stem from stigma and discrimination in society, including from health systems, and reinforces that we need to continue to promote and protect the human rights of LGBTQIA+ people. 10 years have passed since the passage of the Consensus Resolution CD 52.R6, and 5 years have passed since the report of the Director on addressing the causes of disparities in health services access and utilization for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans persons. That report included 13 recommendations to promote action by member states aimed towards achieving universal health and universal access to health services for LGBTQIA+ populations. The United States would like to request a progress report be added to the agenda of the 174th Executive Committee on actions taken by member states delineated by the report's recommendations, and that this report also be considered by the 61st Directed Council in September 2024. Thank you.
Representante de Canadá.
Canada has the floor.
Madam President, Canada also strongly supports the rights of LGBTQI persons, both at home and abroad, and we strongly support human rights for all as a central tenet of our domestic and foreign policy. We like to affirm that the human rights are principles that are universal and indivisible, and that states must respect the human rights of everyone, including LGBTQ2I persons. In the health sector, during COVID, we saw a disproportionate impact on this population due to marginalization, discrimination, and other factors. Governments must ensure that health policies and programs consider specific impacts on LGBTQ2I persons and take into account their needs in a proactive and non-discriminatory way. So as a result, we really do welcome and support the request for a progress report by the United States and as a way to deepen this work at PAHO and in our region. And so we also look forward to other proposed items, including on policies on climate change and equity, for which this is a pressing issue in the Americas, requiring concerted efforts. Thank you.
Gracias.
I thank Canada and offer the floor now to Argentina. Thank you, Madam President. Good morning to all. I just wanted to support the proposal made by the United States of America. Thank you. If there are no further requests for the floor, Director, would you like to comment?
Just to thank the United States, Canada, and Argentina, I think that to highlight the importance about it, that we really need to address what are the barriers, how we are progressing, what are the gaps to address the most vulnerable populations, so sexual and reproductive health, but also LGBTQIA+ populations that are a very important vulnerable population that we need to discuss the situation and maybe to come together to address the barriers, the stigma, the discrimination, the lack of access that they have to health services. I think that's excellent indeed suggestion. And the Secretariat will work with you together with the regional consultations, webinar to collect all the best practices in the region, but at the same time to highlight what are the gaps and how we can address them together. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to inform the committee that it is not necessary to adopt a resolution. The accepted items will appear as a decision in the final report. Item 5.1. Report on the Master Fund for Capital Investment and implementation of the Master Investment Plan. I'd like to draw the committee's attention to document CE 173/6 and invite Ms. Kristen Beck, Director for Administration at the Pan American Health Bureau, to join the head table to introduce this item.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning to the President, to the Director, distinguished members of the committee, and delegates and colleagues. A year ago, during the 171st Executive Committee, we were looking forward to hosting you at governing bodies meetings in 2023 in our newly renovated spaces, and here we are. Thanks to the vision of PAHO's leadership to create a safe and more energy-efficient work environment. It's been a complex endeavor. These renovations, most of which are not visible, began in 2022 with an aim to reduce the risk of equipment failure, improve indoor air quality and circulation, and modernize conference facilities and technologies. To review, and as reported to the committee in the update on the Master Capital Investment Fund in June, the first phase of the headquarters renovation included first upgrading heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, generally known as HVAC system. This has been completed. New mechanical rooms were built and all new equipment was installed on the 2nd and 10th floors, the Rotunda building, and the lobby area. The new HVAC system has improved performance and efficiency, using less electricity to operate due to improved thermal insulation on the equipment and ductwork, resulting in less energy loss and more comfort for the building's occupants. Next, replacing and upgrading the electrical equipment. This has also been completed. Outdated equipment was replaced and new electrical switchgears were installed and are in operation. Third, upgrades to the conference rooms and open spaces on floors 1, 2, and 10, including upgraded audiovisual equipment and systems. This work is nearly completed. As you can see, all conference rooms on the 2nd floor were fully renovated, including audiovisual upgrades that provide the conference rooms with updated technology, including new interpretation systems. Professional audio and video production capabilities and digital signage exist throughout the public spaces. Energy-efficient LED lighting was installed. Finishes were replaced with LEED, which stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, approved products, including the paint, carpeting, and floors, which happen to be made from 100% recycled materials. Also, spaces were designed to provide accessibility for all. And lastly, the roof of the rotunda building was replaced. New insulation was added to the rotunda to limit excess heat into the building or heat loss through the roof. The project has proceeded according to plan and is within its $28.7 million budget, with expenditures through the 31st of August, 2023, totaling $27.3 million. The remaining balance of funds for Phase 1 will be fully utilized by year-end 2023. As Phase 1 renovations near completion, 4 additional elements have been identified to continue improving the infrastructure to the headquarters building. The initial stages of these Phase 2 renovations will begin during the fourth quarter of 2023 and include the following items: replace the HVAC system on floors 3 through 9, renovate all washrooms throughout the building, replace the wood paneling and cabinetry on the 10th floor, and repair the concrete in the basement and sub-basement, including the garage. These 4 projects are described in detail in the document. The total estimated cost for Phase 2 of the renovation is $15.8 million to be implemented over the remainder of 2023 and into 2024. The organization will use $5.8 million of flexible funds available in 2023, and in 2024, the Real Estate Maintenance and Improvement Sub-Fund will be used to fund the remaining $10 million. Because no significant renovations had previously been made to PAHO's 60-year-old structure, even with this sizable investment, further renovations are needed, including the replacement of all original windows throughout the building. This process, referred to as reglazing, would replace the original single-paneled windows with double panes, which aids in blocking the transmission of heat and cold air into the building, further enhancing energy efficiency. We are very proud of the renovations to the headquarters building that you have seen, heard, and felt this week, and we are committed to continue working towards a healthier, greener, and more functionally up-to-date work environment for PAHO personnel and visitors. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, señora Beck.
Thank you very much, Ms. Deck. I'd like to offer the floor to the plenary for discussion.
Bien, si no tenemos comentarios.
If there are no comments, I'd like to offer the floor to Ms. Beckett, if there's anything she'd like to add. Very well, thank you. Director, do you have any comments? I'll be brief, Madam President. I'd just like to express gratitude first, support of the member states during the past 2 years, and the initiative of our now Director Emeritus, Carissa Etienne, starting a process that is actually for the conservation of the building, because we had serious structural issues to address. The people who have been coming for longer will recall that the air conditioning issues that we faced, and it was noisy system, and it wasn't operating very well. It was 60 years old, and there was always a significant noise from the HVAC. So those were major changes that were done here on the second floor and on floor 10. And as Ms. Deck pointed out, we now have to go for a renovation of some additional HVACs for the floors 3 through 9, and that will be less costly. It's not quite as old. It's only 20 years old instead of 60 years old, but we want to guarantee cool air and a good system. Then there are also some structural issues still. We're seeing these in the concrete in the basement. There are 2 basements here. One is a parking and one has different facilities and installations. So it's going to be necessary there to correct some problems and issues in the concrete to avoid future serious problems. Then we also have the renovation of the washrooms of the building. we have heard, and I don't know if this applies to the women's bathrooms, but in men's bathrooms we've had problems. 2 participants were sort of caught in there because the cabinet doors are very old, they're 60 years old, and it was difficult to open them, so that's going to be renewed. We're not going to be doing anything of high luxury. These are actions for the conservation of the building, because this is heritage for all the countries of the Americas. Thank you very much. Thank you, Director. I'd like to inform the committee that the discussion and comments will be reflected in the final report. We next move on to the next agenda item, item 6, other matters. As we are considering other matters, let me ask the Director if there are any other matters he would like to present for consideration by the Directing Council. No, Madam President, said the Director. I offer the floor now to any delegate who wishes to submit any other matter under this agenda item. The floor is granted to Chile. Thank you very much, Madam President, and good morning to everyone. Chile would like to issue an invitation to the upcoming event that will take place in Chile on 10-11 April 2024 on patient safety. There is an important group of countries who have already held 5 global meetings focusing on patient safety. The most recent meeting took place this year in Montreux, Switzerland, an event where Chile was invited to host the next summit. As this is the first time the summit will be taking place in the Americas, we believe that the topics to be addressed must focus on our reality. When we talk about patient safety, we understand this is a progressive, relevant concern for the countries of our region. Therefore, we hope to count on your participation at this World Conference. There will be guests from everywhere in the world, and in particular from our regional countries. So we sincerely hope that at this event we will be able to see great participation by us all. On the other hand, Madam President, Chile would like to underscore the need for PAHO to tackle the high-cost diseases. To date, this has been an item that countries have been confronting in an isolated way with great effort, with many losses, loss of life also, of people suffering these high-cost diseases that our countries have not been able to address, especially financially. Therefore, we'd like to suggest that in the upcoming tasks undertaken by the organization, this topic of high-cost disease be reviewed, and perhaps in the future we may have some proposals in order to be accountable to our peoples. Thank you. Thank you, Chile. I now offer the floor to Uruguay. Thank you very much, Madam President. Uruguay presents for consideration by the Executive Committee the preparation of a new strategy and 5-year plan of action to strengthen tobacco control in the Americas, using as basis the results of the most recent assessment. To have a new plan will allow for a better follow-up and assessment of advances and limitations in implementation of the FCTC and protocol as Target 3 of the SDGs for our region. We therefore request this proposed debate be added to the 174th session of the Executive Committee, and also consider the participation of a working party made up of member states. Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you, Uruguay. Ecuador is now recognized. Thank you very much, Madam President. As instructed by the government of the Republic of Ecuador, we request reopening topics of the Executive Committee, and that the agenda consider the motion to have a working party to gather information and prepare proposed resolution having to do with the equitable access to surgery, obstetrics, and anesthesia as part of universal health coverage. The proposed resolution will encourage joint memberships between the member states to have solid surgical teams, considering the following specific objectives. 1, improve access to surgical care, creating a network of health centers and hospitals with appropriate surgical equipment, and to have strategies to counteract geographic, financial, and cultural barriers identified. 2, improve the quality and safety for patients through implementation of standards and protocols that are evidence-based, training health personnel in safe practices, and improving the facilities and equipment for surgery for the health system. 3, promote a culture of patient safety at all levels of the national system, strengthening the training of health professionals, including specialized medical training, and encourage investigation, thus ensuring long-term sustainability of surgical systems in Latin America and the Caribbean. Transfer information and knowledge through the building of mechanisms to share information and best practices having to do with enhancing surgical systems in the region, facilitating the gathering of data as to availability, accessibility, quality, and safety of surgical services in the region. Ecuador would be grateful for this motion to be considered and appreciates PAHO's support as well as that of member states for its execution. Thank you very much.
Ecuador.
Thank you, Ecuador. I call on Guyana.
Thank you very much, Madam President, Director, other Executive Board members. I want to raise 3 points for consideration. The first is to have consideration on human resources in the region, particularly the migration that is happening, especially in the Caribbean, and to see whether or not we can come up with concrete actions as to how to stem the crisis that is being created by this migration. I know that we have done some reports in the past, but we need to have concrete intervention to address this problem, because if it is left unaddressed, it is going to become a major source of difficulty for the Caribbean at least, and Guyana in particular. So that's my first point. The second point that I want to emphasize is that last week at the UNGA, there was a declaration dealing with universal health coverage, and I think going forward, we need to have an assessment of where we are in the region in terms of universal health coverage. So I like to put that also on the agenda. And the third thing is, we recognize that a lot of the programming that we want to do in the region of the Americas would require resources. And we have seen from the plenary this week the amount of resources it would take to run some of these programs. It is also evident that this region of the Americas, I don't think, is receiving its fair share from the WHO. And therefore, as an executive of PAHO, I think we need to engage WHO to ensure that the region gets its fair share of resources. And so I would also like to put that on the agenda to see whether we can empower the director and his team to re-engage WHO to get more resources for our region. My understanding is that there are two different systems. I might be wrong. But for some region, one particular system is used, and for our region, a different system is used, and therefore it creates some form of inequity. And it's either we have one universal system for all regions, or we figure out a different way. But one way or another, I think we need to get fair resources coming to the region from WHO. Those are the points I'd like to place on for consideration.
Muchas gracias, representante.
I thank the representative of Guyana and call on the representative of Puerto Rico. Microphone for Puerto Rico. Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations on your election. I'd like to support Chile's proposal on high-cost diseases. High-cost diseases affect the entire world in many different regions, not just in how it's treated and managed and diagnosed, but one example is dialysis. Dialysis has enormous impact, and we know that we have more and more diabetic patients with high blood pressure who end up with chronic terminal disease and require dialysis, particularly vascular effects have an impact in Puerto Rico. We see in Puerto Rico and the United States, the high cost is represented for Medicare, so it's a very real problem. Also, oncological diseases, they have more accurate diagnosis, but more costly. Also, immunotherapy used in oncology. And there's also what we call rare diseases there, on how to detect them. It adds a high burden to the disease burden in each country. So we very strongly support Chile's request to include an item on high-cost diseases. Thank you, the delegate of Puerto Rico. I'd like to see if there's any other requests. Jamaica has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jamaica would also like to support the request from Chile. You know, just before coming to this meeting, my attention was brought to the cost of treating hemophiliacs in Jamaica and the fact that we have to rely on external funding for the management of these diseases. A very small number of people, but a very, very high cost. And there are several illnesses like that small countries really do have a difficulty in deciding how it is that you manage this small set of persons with this very high cost and cater for the rest of the population. So Jamaica would just like to add our support to the request by Chile. We would also like to support the statement by Ecuador in terms of the call for attention to the surgical services and to ensure that our peripheral hospitals, there was a WHO resolution some years ago that called for the enhancement of surgical and anesthetic care in our peripheral hospitals. And I don't think that we have had any kind of report on this matter over the years, and I think that this is also a timely call by Ecuador. I would also just want to mention the agenda item of long-term care that is on the agenda. I think that this is very, very relevant. As we all, as small countries and large countries alike, face the aging population, we would recognize that we really do need to put measures in place to address this need, this growing need, and that this is only going to increase. And so I think that the inclusion of long-term care on the agenda is very timely and very, very much needed. Thank you so much.
Gracias.
Thank the representative of Jamaica, and now call on Mexico. Thank you, Madam Chair. We join others in congratulating you on your election. We'd like to support Chile's request, supported by Puerto Rico and Jamaica. We think it's very relevant. As an organization, as member states, we should have the opportunity to discuss and address from a regional perspective the problem of high-cost medication, not just high-cost disease, but also high-cost medication and medicines, and the cost this represents for our countries. And perhaps an approach of joint procurement through the fund, or maybe through complementary funds that we could establish in the organization for that purpose. Thank you, Mexico. I call on Brazil.
Muchas gracias, señora.
Thank you very much, Madam
Thank
President.
Parabenizá-la.
I'd like to congratulate you on your election this morning and wish you great success as president. There are 2 points that I'd like to react on here. First, the U.S. proposal to address the health of LGBT populations. Brazil is highly interested in participating at any potential consultation, and we support that suggestion, and would like to thank the delegation of the United States for their proposal. With regards to the Chilean proposal, so that for our agenda next year to focus on high-cost diseases, as the colleague from Mexico pointed out, Brazil has great interest in participating in that discussion also, even through the judicial look at that proposal. The Supreme Federal Court has actually just started working through a special committee at the level of states and municipalities in the Union of Brazil to look at the budgetary weight and public policy when looking at the legal aspects and judicial aspects impacting health. So it's a very important topic in our country, and we would like that it be looked at from that perspective, looking at the judicial impact of providing health care. That would be a matter of great interest to us. Thank you. Thank you, Brazil.
Si hay algún otro país.
Is there any other country that has a comment on these proposals? If there are none, I'd like to ask Dr. Barbosa if he has any comments. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to all member states who have made some very relevant comments and suggestions. We had 3 groups of suggestions here so that it's properly recorded in the meeting. First, suggestions for inclusion of new topics, new items in the direct governing bodies meetings of 2024. Secondly, we heard some proposals that were more of an appeal to action. In other words, issues or items that we have to clarify. And the third, it's a combination of both. So in the first, on topics for including in the next governing bodies, we have the proposal by the United States for a population on the gaps that exist in the QT plus population, which was supported by Brazil. This has already been included. Then we have Chile's proposal, which is, I think, a double proposal to include the item for discussion. And I would like to report that next year we will be presenting a final report on that topic. So that may be the moment to renew the discussion through a new resolution. But I think that what Chile's also doing is doing a call to action. And I underscore that I think that for that purpose, solidarity is extremely important. We have to use the strategic fund through discussions with the countries to try to see if we could identify 4, 5, 6 medicines that have the greatest impact on budgets, and then begin a regional negotiation process, maybe even using new negotiating systems such as sharing risks. But that's something we're going to do right now because it's a very important issue. Not only does it have an impact on budgets, but it's also an issue that encourages inequity. Because when a budget is limited and you spend money on high-cost medications without prior negotiation, then, for instance, the decision to buy the medicine, if there is not a distributor that exists in the country, then the country has to pay the cost of the U.S. market for that medicine, which is extremely high. So we will be having a final report next year, and there will be a specific item on this point. But we are going to begin working immediately using the strategic fund to see if we can begin negotiations and consultations with countries to have a better idea of how we should move forward on this. And when I say that solidarity is crucial, what I'm saying is that volume is very important in order to negotiate better. So those countries that have a large population in Latin America have an important role to play in this, so that we can ensure that all the other countries of Latin America and the Caribbean can get access to that. It's very different if you're negotiating when you're talking in terms of thousands of treatments and when you're only talking about 2 or 3 treatments on behalf of a small Caribbean. Brazil, which is an item for inclusion under the items covered by the 2024 governing bodies. And it's a question of tobacco. And in the new regional plan, we have to address these new challenges. And I think that was the intent of Brazil, of Uruguay, excuse me. Ecuador's proposal is also an important one, which should be discussed at the Erecting Council, and that's the question of access to safe surgery. And when we talk about the indicators in the region, we can see very clearly that there's a big gap still. And part of it is due to lack of access to health services. There's long waiting lines, there's long waiting time, and that, I think, is also a topic we are proposing for the countries to decide on, and I don't think there's much objection. There's support for this. The Minister of Guyana called for 3 actions. First, the question of migration. In the resolution that you approved this last week, that new strategy on human resources for health up until 2030, one of these strategic lines is exactly that, the question of migration. But I think what the minister was saying is that we don't not just need to have a declaration, but we have to implement it as quickly as possible. In other words, how, in negotiating with countries, can we negotiate measures that allow us to deal with this huge challenge? I'll switch to English.
And also our collaborative center in Brazil. I received the pictures yesterday and I was touched by them. So we have nurses from Guyana being trained in Brazil in the University of São Paulo. It's a campus that is in the city of Ribeirão Preto. They are a collaborative center of WHO and PAHO. They are training the tutors in Guyana. So Guyana is starting a very ambitious and comprehensive program training nurses to respond to the crisis that they have in the country. I think that this is an excellent initiative, Minister. I congratulate you again, your leadership on this topic. And it also is a concrete collaboration provided by a center that is helping to address a very important problem in our region. So this, I fully agree with you, Minister. We need to be more active on this topic. We need to see how we can have a high-level discussion about that, to have some commitments that we can do, because the resolution we already have and was approved this week. The second one is about the assessment of universal health care, and I think that also you were inspired by the report that was presented, and I take this, let's build on this report that was presented this week, and to identify in a more with more details, where are the gaps, where are the progresses, so this can be a guidance about the new strategies that the country needs to address, because we have so many things that now are available, telemedicine, teleconsult. I think that the digital transformation of the health sector, I think that the task shift, many other strategies that you need to adopt to strengthen primary health care access. And finally, I thank you also for raising the topic about the distribution of resources among the 6 regions. I will share with all member states an analysis about the situation that we have now, the conversations that we are having with Geneva. As I mentioned during the Directing Council, we are committed to a global vision on equity. We know that Africa needs more support. We don't want to make a competition of resources. But at the same time, we cannot agree that Geneva is using 2 different criteria to apply the distribution of the funds. So in our region, this conduct to a situation that we are not able to strengthen our country offices in the key countries that you have in the region. Even in Suriname, in the first proposal that you received, we were not able to add 1 single technical position in Suriname, while in other regions, they are receiving the funds to fulfill all the technical positions in all the country offices. So this is the size of the disparity. So we presented another proposal for WTO, and I think that this proposal is aligned with your voices that the Americas wanted to participate in the global effort supporting the other regions, but we also needed to receive more attention because we have poverty, we have extreme poverty, we have inequalities, we have vulnerabilities to climate change in many countries, so we really needed to have a more balanced distribution. I hope that the Director General will be listening to these voices, and I think that, again, Minister, thank you very much for raising this important topic. Thank you, Madam President.
Gracias.
I thank the various delegations who have spoken, and thank you, Dr. Barbosa. And I'd like to report to the committee that this discussion will be reflected in the final report. And now we move on to the next item. The closure of the session, item number 7. To close this session, I'd like to invite the Director, Dr. Barbosa, to say a few closing words. Thank you, Madam President. I'll be very brief. First of all, let me welcome the new members of the Executive Committee and the new President of the Executive Committee. I think we will have excellent work sections at the next meetings of the subcommittee in March and the committee of the Executive Committee itself in June. And I think we've just come out of a directing council that I believe was very successful, with a very strong intent on the part of the countries to work in a more coordinated fashion. And during this phase in which we are recovering from the negative impact of the pandemic, and where we now have to respond in a better way to the many challenges we have in order to offer more equitable health in our region. So I thank all the members for their contributions, all the members of the committee, as well as the observers who have demonstrated the interest the countries have in the issues and topics of concern to the organization, which is the best guarantee we have. If we can strengthen technical cooperation through discussion, through suggestions, through the items you bring up, we'll be successful. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Barbosa. Before saying a few words of closure and before everyone leaves, I'd like to report that since we were very efficient and we did not have to have a coffee break, we will have a coffee at the end of the session. It will be downstairs with some snacks. So having said that, I'd like to again express your appreciation for the confidence you have expressed in Uruguay as President of the Executive Committee, and I'd like to reiterate a deep commitment to work in a responsible way with full respect for the different views and the different interests of member states for the purpose of improving the health of the Americas. With this, I declare the closure of the 73rd session of the Executive Committee, 173rd session of the Executive Committee. Thank you.